Scott Sloan here on 700 WLW. Horrible story yesterday. You've been kind of dominating the news to some degree here, and it involves untimely deaths in the tri-state. And unfortunately, we had 2 dead after a gravel truck. It was a dump truck filled with gravel, struck a car, an SUV, crashed in the front of a bar at 42 and Beaver Road. That's in Walton, Kentucky. The victims, an 89 and a 91-year-old female. It was a 66-year-old driver of the SUV. Fortunately, the driver's alive, but in critical condition at UCMC. The truck driver had minor injuries, but crashed in the front of a bar. And you think, my God, thank God it was early, because had that been maybe another hour later, I'm guessing a number of patrons would have been at the bar. And that could have been far, far worse than what it was. But 2 dead. And this is 2 dead. And we had yet another person who died on the roads of Boone County, Kentucky. And to ask the question of, all right, is it the drivers or is it the environment, is Jesse Brewer, Boone County Commissioner, on the show on 700 WLW. Jesse, welcome.
Hey, I wish it was under better circumstances today, but I appreciate you having me on, Sloan.
Yeah, this is, so we had another death, another fatal accident. This one in particular involved the gravel truck and the car striking, and I'm looking at maybe some information here from the Boone County Sheriff's Department. So I guess this dump truck driver tried to hit the brakes. The SUV pulled out in front, struck the SUV, killed the 2 people. The driver is in critical condition. The truck is okay, but it sent the SUV literally flying across the southbound lanes, hit a guardrail and flipped over, causing the fatal. The dump truck went off the side of the road, hit I think a number of cars in that lot at the restaurant there. It's called Boondocks Pub Grub at 42 and Beaver Road in Walton. And no speed, no drugs. Everyone's wearing a seatbelt. Unfortunately, 2 fatals. But we think that maybe there's so much overgrowth at that intersection, at that area, that the SUV driver didn't see the dump truck coming because the damn roads weren't in good shape.
Yes. A lot of these state roads, and this is the classic, well, that's a county road, it's a state road, it's a city road. And I always say, we drive them all. So the problem is, a fatal crash doesn't know the difference on who takes care of it. Yeah. The issue here with a lot of our roads, a lot of these state roads especially, is they were built back when Boone County's population was a third of what it is today.
Right.
And so over time, as we've grown, more cars on the road, it's a problem. I was just talking to my good friends over at the Sheriff's Department this morning, and they do what they do what they can to keep it safe as they possibly can with the resources they have, but they can't be everywhere at once. And I said, what's the number one problem? With this intersection yesterday, I was like, tell me the number one problem. He goes, honestly, visibility of sight distance is a technical term. He goes, we need to clear out the vegetation. We need to really engineer and straighten these roads out. And that's going to take a substantial investment from the state of Kentucky to do that, because they're state-owned roads. Even if the county wanted to say, you know what, it's on our dime, we're going to go do it, state wouldn't let us. It is their road. And not that we'd have the resources that they would have to do it anyway.
So you can't, Jesse, to be clear here, you're saying is that it's a state road. So the county, normally I think of the county as like, well, if you have overgrowth and there's brush at an intersection, and this spring it's starting to blow up now, the county needs to trim that. And you're saying you guys can't touch that. It's on the state?
If it's on the state property. Now, we do work with, and we are starting to get some of the stuff trimmed up that we can, and we have been entering in agreements with them for that, but it's been a long time coming. But the problem with the visibility at this one, especially this time of year, wasn't so much the vegetation on that particular wreck yesterday. That's been a problem in the past because it's not full bloom yet. It's the road is so windy and curvy, and it's only a 2-lane road. Gotcha. And in the way the curve, you have the bends that come into the intersection right there, and that needs engineering. That's the big part of what we need to get done. We need to widen the road out, straighten those curves up. Our population's grown 3-fold since these roads have been built, and there's a problem with that. I got some stats this morning. There's 120 counties in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, which is a lot. Right. That is a lot. Just to give perspective, Ohio only has 88 and has a lot more people than we have. 4.5 million people, 120 counties. But out of those 120 counties, Boone County is number 6 for serious injuries. We're number 6 most dangerous Not like this is where number 1 is bad.
Yeah.
We are number 6. We're number 14 for fatals. You know, in the last year, we've had 4 fatals in our county here on these roads. 475 serious accidents this year alone. And we're in March. We're April. We're in April.
Right.
So it's like, when's enough? You know, we have a traffic, an infrastructure meeting coming up in our county on the 22nd of April. And it's where people come and we're trying to lay out the infrastructure plan. And I've invited the Secretary of Transportation, see if he accepts the invitation. But I think he needs to come up here. I think the governor needs to come up here. I think they need to hear what's going on in the northern part of the state with all these injuries that we're having and all these roads that were built, you know, adequate for the time, but didn't foresee the growth that was going to come to the area.
Well, it's interesting because here in the city of Cincinnati, you often have city lawmakers on, as you know, Jesse, and I consider, you know, Northern Kentucky, where you are, in Boone County, Campbell, Kenton, that's part of our metro area. You know, you may be from Kentucky and probably Kentucky in the Commonwealth, but he's like, yeah, I'm from the Cincinnati area. I get that. As a Warren County person, I say the same thing myself. But I look at this and go, the city of Cincinnati has had terrible road problems for years, to the point where they sold the railroads in order to facilitate the building of roads. That's going to take 10 years. That's how far behind they are. Is that just indicative of government in general or our region?
Yes, unfortunately, you have a political component can play. They say build the road first before you have the need. Well, then those with the purse strings say, show me the need before I give you the money. So it's a chicken and the egg scenario. You know, it's like, I got this. We anticipate this need, and they're going to get all this money for this roadway, and then the need doesn't come. Then you get the road to nowhere, or like what, which has happened out in the eastern part of Kentucky is a real famous thing. So it's a chicken and the egg scenario. What do you do? Because on one hand, you got to be beholden to the taxpayers. That says, well, we don't want to waste our money, which I can respect that. I don't want to waste that either.
Because you have limited resources.
On the other hand, you know, government is anything but fast. You know, when I was in the Army, I learned that early on when I was 18 years old in the Army. Hurry up and wait. And I always heard what that meant, but I really learned we hurry up and we wait. Government is slow, and there are certain things that we can do to try to cut some red tape to speed some things up. But even then, it's still, we have real traffic issues. We have real safety issues. We have a lot. And now what really scares me as a Kentuckian, I don't know if you noticed in the news or not, but Kentucky just passed a law recently to now you can start driving at the age of 15 in Kentucky instead of 16. Yes, that's a recent one. It was a workforce development initiative, and it passed. So now we're going to have, you know, I have a daughter who's 12. She'll be 13 here in a couple of weeks. Yeah. And I'm sitting there looking at her like, oh, dear Lord. I got 3 older ones that drive, and I felt the same way about them. I still kind of do because they're my boys. But now I'm looking like, oh my gosh, you know. Well,
I think that's part of the problem. Is you met again Jesse Brewer, Boone County Commissioner, on the show on 700 WW. 3 people dead in 2 separate accidents. Of course, the dump truck one yesterday, 2 dead there. And he's saying having to do with poor road design and poor road maintenance. The Commonwealth of Kentucky, because it's a state route, the county can't touch that. And the end result is they let these roads go to pot, kind of like the city of Cincinnati did. And the end result is people are dying. You know, that's just something that is absolutely not acceptable in my book. And there's a lot of reasons as to cause an accident, but because you have overgrown brush and a driver can't see over the brush that can't be trimmed because the state is neglecting it, that may have caused this dump truck accident. That I'm sorry is just untenable. You can't have that. And quite honestly, this should be first and foremost called the attention of lawmakers in Frankfort, because that is a failure. If it is indeed true, that's a failure of government at the highest levels. I mean, that's like basic housekeeping right there.
Agreed. In Kentucky, so there's 38 state senators, there's 100 state reps. Out of those 38 state senators, Boone County actually has 2 of them. We're the only county in the Commonwealth with 2 of the 38 senators. And really, it's a 31-7 supermajority Republican. So realistically, the Republicans set the tone for everything because they're supermajority. 2 of the 31 supermajority senators are right here in our county. But it just goes to show you the bureaucratic machine and wheels. You would think that's a big number. There's several counties in the state that are 7, 8 counties that share 1. We have 2. That live right here in our county. Senator Jay Williams, Senator Steve Rawlings, and I know they've worked on some other projects here and there. But like, I'm calling those guys, and they're my friends, and I'm calling them like, hey, what can we do to get attention to this? What can we do to get our voices heard? We've got 5 state reps out of 100 that have Boone County. It's like, what can we do, guys? We need to come together. We need to prioritize this. We need to show them, make them listen, and put R&D aside, because the road doesn't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, a Libertarian, if you're what your race is or nothing. If it's an unsafe road, it's an unsafe road, and we need to do something about it.
Well, this has been a problem for a long time. I'll bring up the Brent Spence Bridge. When we had George Bush in office, and he got a lot of money from the Terrace Park and Indian Hill zip codes and fundraising. You had then Speaker of the House John Boehner on the Ohio side. You then had Mitch McConnell still in office, Mitch McConnell on the other, and we still couldn't get anything done. Now we've got Mitch McConnell still, and you've got Vice President J.D. Vance from Middletown, which I would consider him a Cincinnati guy. And, that's at the federal level. I'm just saying is that no matter how much juice you think you have, apparently you don't have that much juice to begin with.
You would be amazed that juice gets diluted really, really quick when it gets poured into the bigger punch bowl. We think it's concentrated up here, and it's diluted really quick. And it's a shame. It's a shame that our roadways have become political bargaining chips. I understand there's tax rates and this and that. And there's certain things that are going to be nationally politics. Infrastructure is not one of them. Yeah. Infrastructure, safe infrastructure, knows no party, is a true nonpartisan issue. And I just hope and pray that we can come together and realize that. Yeah.
Jesse Brewer, the other element here, too, and I say this to Ohio lawmakers as well. You mentioned that we now have in Kentucky 15-year-olds behind the wheel of a car. And I don't know if that's a good
not yet. Not
yet. It's going to happen.
They just started.
Sure. But the point is, we're going to add more drivers to already congested roadways. The roadways that weren't built for the amount of traffic we have. I'll point to the Brent Spence Bridge. And that's why the Brent Spence Bridge is outdated. It's just a choke point all the time. Our roads are suffering because we have so many drivers out there. At the same time, I just saw a story, maybe you did too, I forget where this was, but there was a 74-year-old woman who went to a casino and got lost out of the parking lot and wound up somehow out of the parking lot. Her car caught on fire, and they found her huddled underneath a tree for like a couple days or something like that. And fortunately, she's going to be okay. But I also look at this and going, hey, should we be addressing younger drivers on the road? You have younger drivers, older drivers. You have over-the-road truck drivers. We have a disparate number of speeds and the like. Should we also be looking at limiting access to roadways by older drivers, in that you do see a steady drumbeat as we get older, not necessarily living better, we're living longer, and we come at a point where we become disoriented, we have mental health issues, dementia, those kind of diseases of aging fit in, and it's not punching down, it's being responsible. If we are going to control and curtail the ability of a 15 or 16-year-old to what they can do behind the wheel of a car, when they can access the roadways, and under what conditions they can function as a driver, should we not be doing that to our older drivers as well?
That's obviously something that's been around a long time, and you always hear the jokes. I'm not having that conversation. My mom or my dad are taking the keys away, and we all joke about it. And my father passed away a few years ago, but if he was still alive, and I'm not having that conversation with my dad.
And the thing is, the state, but Jesse, the state won't either. That's the problem. It's like, why should I, as an adult, I have to tell my parents they shouldn't be driving a car because of their mental or physical health conditions? And when you get old, you get stubborn. I get it. I'm getting there myself. We're both getting there, right? I get that, but it should be it should be up to the state to determine that. It shouldn't be up to the family.
I don't disagree with you, and I think there's I know there's some I've read like cognitive tests, or you have to take an eye exam at least, or something like that to prove that you can still see. And I'm not exactly sure the metrics of it, how that works. Hasn't hit me yet, but I'm sure it will here sooner or later. And it's a tough issue. I think a lot of politicians at the state levels, that would be a state level local change. They're beholden to their voters. Yeah. A lot of seniors vote,
and that's unfortunate.
And if they come on talking about they're going to take away their right to drive.
Yep.
What's going to happen? I mean, I think you may.
Well, I don't think taking it away, but I think, if we test and check and have rules in place for younger drivers, we should have the same rules in place for older drivers, because there's plenty of people on the roads as we get older that should not be behind the wheel of a car. In this case, as a 66-year-old driver driving 90-year-olds, that's what should be happening. So I'm not pointing at this case in particular, but as we talk about overcrowded roadways and good and bad drivers, I think that's all got to come into play. Jesse Brewer, bottom line here, what do you want to happen in Frankfort at this point? You had a fatal accident times 2 yesterday, 2 and 1 in that dump truck accident, but there's another one not just a couple days ago, I think, or a day before, involving a death on the roads in Boone County. We see the high water, that factors in, but the roads are in bad shape. They're badly maintained. You're not cutting down the brush because the state's supposed to do that. They're not doing it. What's it going to take to get the attention of lawmakers?
I keep asking that every day. I'm inviting them to meetings. I've invited, like I said this morning, I sent a message directly to the Transportation Secretary, Jim Gray. He has yet to respond. I'm sure he gets a lot of requests. It's a lot of road miles to cover with issues, but I'm hoping that he comes to our meeting up here. He's from Lexington. He's from a metropolitan area, so he knows what that's like. My message to Frankfort would be, we are the 4th or 5th. We kind of go back and forth between us and Warren County, most populated state and most populated county in the state.
Yeah,
we're in the top 5, right? We are the 6th most dangerous for accidents with serious injuries, and we're the 14th most dangerous for fatals.
Yep.
I wish they would give our attention not only to Boone, but also Kenton and Campbell with the region. I wish they would really give the attention to our region. If Boone, Kenton, and Campbell County were to become a city, we'd be larger. I think we'd be larger. We'd be larger than Lexington, just behind Louisville, if I remember reading the stats.
Okay.
We'd be like the 3rd largest state.
But you get no attention because you're considered Cincinnati.
Well, we are the stepchild. Cincinnati doesn't want us because we're Kentucky.
Yeah.
Frankfort doesn't want us because we're too far north. But when it comes time to take our tax dollars, they are ready and willing and able to take them. And we don't get the equal investment that we send down there back. That's a known fact. We send $1 down, we get 50 cents back, and we're supposed to be grateful for it.
You're saying, Jesse Brewer, you're saying it's taxation without representation. You're going to have a tea party in Kentucky, and you're going to dump gallons of bourbon into the Ohio River. Is that what's going to happen? Because if that's the case, I may actually drink water from the Ohio River.
Good luck that.
Right.
We get representation. We just don't get our fair share. We get outnumbered by other interests in other parts of the state.
I get it,
because we're considered up there. And I wish they would end those politics, look at what's going on, and really come together and say, let's focus on solutions.
All right, maybe we'll get something out of this. Unfortunately, though, largely what happens, it takes a massive tragedy. I'll point to what happened in Carrollton in 1988, rather, when you had a fatal school bus accident, killed 67 people, and then that's what takes laws to change. But it's blood. Laws are written in blood. Jesse, I got to go. Thanks for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, that is Boone County Commissioner Jesse Brewer on the Scott Sloan Show. 700 WLW.